And I think it's important that people are, educated about their rights to actually say that this sort of behavior is completely unacceptable. So this, campaign arm is going to continue to explore various ways of getting the word out and also trying to keep the government accountable. And we really would appreciate everyone's input in this because, things like human rights is something that affects every single one of us. And I think particularly for people who live abroad, many of us live abroad simply because we can no longer or would not choose to live in a society where we feel that we're not free to move and be who we want to be. And I think there are about 1 million Malaysians living overseas. And I think in that sense, actually, we owe it to our Malaysians back home, if they're not able to speak out for themselves, to actually take on the role of solidarity campaigning and speaking out on their behalf. This year has been really encouraging because since April, we've had a series of monthly ISA protests outside the Malaysian Tourism Office. And each time we turn up, I'm always a little bit worried about, is anyone going to be there? Is it just going to be like 2 of us? It's, minus 2 degrees Celsius today. Is this asking too much? But, we've been really encouraged because each time we've had at least 40 people present. We see new faces. People hear about us through different avenues. And it's just really encouraging that people will take some time out in their, Saturday, once a month, to stand up against something that they believe is wrong. And I think that in some senses what we're doing is actually very small, and we obviously do not face the sort of persecution and the sort of problems that people in Malaysia face. We've had some protesters who have protested in Malaysia and come over here and joined our protests, when they've been on holiday. And they've said, this is really boring because where are the water cannons? Where are the tear gas? Where are the FRU marching towards us? But on the other hand, we've also heard people saying that, well, this is how freedom of speech works. This is how the right to protest works. And we're not doing anything major, but we are sort of just taking a stand. And I really would encourage people who are living abroad, in Australia, in America, wherever you are in the world, really think about tapping into this campaign and showing solidarity with our friends and our families back home. And also, I think, getting into that process of how we conduct campaigning, for example. So, in Malaysia, you're not allowed to meet in groups of 4 or more unless you have a police permit. In the UK, there is no such thing as a police permit, but you inform the police of your intentions to protest or to be at a particular place at a particular time. And we email the Metropolitan Police every month. They've now come to know us, and they know that we are peaceful protesters and we're not going to be causing any trouble. And during the protest, they will actually come over and have conversations with us and actually engage. And we've had people, again, from Malaysia on holiday who said this is just completely bizarre because, we would never expect, police officers to actually start talking to us when we're at a protest. So I think just trying to re-educate the culture and the political mindset of about how, a society should actually be going forward is actually very important. I've digressed a little, but that's about campaigning. And finally, I'd just like to mention one other project which MCLM is also involved in. And basically, it's something called the My Overseas Vote campaign. So My Overseas Vote is a campaign which is a collaboration between My Overseas Vote, MCLM, and BERSE, the organization in Malaysia that campaigns for free and fair elections. And the reason why we've launched this campaign is because basically there are about 1 million Malaysians overseas, and about 40% of them live in Singapore, about 20% in other Asian countries, and then about 40% are scattered around Australia, the UK, America, and Europe. And basically, under the election regulations of 2002, only members of the armed forces, public servants, students, and their spouses living overseas are eligible to register to vote as absentee voters. MOV has sought a legal opinion on this, and the advice that we've received is that this is actually a discriminatory practice which is being arbitrarily implemented by the EC. And we believe that as part of our constitutional right, we have the right to vote, and we should be able to vote wherever we are. And you can't just have the EC putting on arbitrary rules about who can and cannot participate in the democratic process. So this campaign was launched last month, and at the moment we're now on an education drive to increase awareness about the campaign. We're also on a fundraising drive to try and raise funds to actually mount a legal challenge to the EC. And we're also looking for willing litigants of good repute to actually step forward and be prepared to take part in a test case to actually challenge the provisions of the EC and hopefully re-enfranchise 1 million voters who are overseas but currently locked out of the voting system. So all of you are here, and this has an impact on you, and essentially we can have an impact on what happens in Malaysia. So I really would encourage all of you to take part. And finally, I just want to close by saying that we'd like to just acknowledge that we know that there is some concern amongst the general public about the civil society independent candidate initiatives that Rajapetra has just talked about. And I know that there has been some concern in the last few weeks about the possibility of three-way fights and splinter votes. But I would just like to really reiterate that the Malaysian civil liberties movement is focused on restoring and promoting human rights in Malaysia, and really encouraging the active participation of civil society in nation building. Many of us have developed close links to Pakatan Rakyat, and many of us were part of Barisan Rakyat campaign in 2008 that helped to bring about the political shift that we saw in GE12. And we also need to appreciate that, as Rajapetra said, as early as 2004, many of the opposition parties in Malaysia had consulted and sought the involvement of many civil society members, respected activists, academics, etc., and urged them to get involved in the political process, but many of them declined. And once again, I feel it's very important. We can constantly identify the problem, and we can constantly point out what is wrong, but I think the time has actually come to try and provide a solution to the problem. And once again, we also have to take some ownership and some responsibility for the fact that, in fact, as part of civil society, by actually just sitting back and not doing anything and not participating in the current political process, we've actually allowed the situation in Malaysia to spiral out of control through our omission and our resignation. And we can't be waiting for other people to take the lead or to take charge of the situation, because this is something that involves all of us, and we have to stand up now, because if we wait, it's going to be too late. We want to see a strong opposition coalition, and we want to see a strong two-party system, at least within a democracy, where there are adequate checks and balances. But we do believe that this is only going to be possible if we're all willing to play our part. And this means playing our part at all levels. It means playing our part at the ballot box, so registering to vote and actually exercising that right. It means getting involved in policy development committees and policy implementation, and also demanding good governance. Now we know that Pakatan Rakyat has many good people in it who have actually worked very hard in the last few years to try and deliver this, and we know that there have been a lot of good initiatives, including things like the CELCAT committee and the Freedom of Information Bill in Selangor. The fact that increased financial prudence and transparency in Penang has led to state revenues exceeding 1 billion this year. However, what we would actually say is that there is still so much more work to be done, and the road ahead is actually still very long. And what we need is actually to get everybody to start getting involved and contributing. And so I really do believe that the time for armchair commentary and unconstructive criticism is now over, and what we need is actually to develop a cohesive, positive action plan and actually go forward to implement it. So we would just like to, and I would just like to end by saying that we know that the general elections are shortly around the corner, and we must remember that now is the time to focus and consolidate all our efforts towards ensuring that the current status quo is not allowed to continue infringing our basic civil liberties and human rights in Malaysia, and that all of us seated here today are really committed to seeing an end to the gross human rights violations in Malaysia, and to fostering a more democratic, just, accountable, and participatory form of governance. And to that end, we really sincerely hope that we'll be able to engage and collaborate with all our friends, both currently involved in politics, but also in civil society, who share similar aspirations for shaping a better Malaysia. Thank you.